This episode of Lawyers Tell All is brought to you by the Intake Academy. Do you know how to cement relationships with more of your ideal clients, get them to commit to you, and send you more referrals than you ever thought possible? Visit www.intakeacademy.com, where you will get the strategies you need to make the most of your marketing and advertising dollars. Plus, develop a team of intake specialists and attorneys who convert more qualified case opportunities and build meaningful relationships with prospective clients. Welcome to the Lawyers Tell All podcast, where Chris Mullins, the preeminent sales and communications consultant in the legal industry, shows you how it looks through lawyers' eyes. Here, innovators in the trenches provide powerful insights that help you connect with new clients, handle the sometimes harsh realities of the legal profession, and embrace the mindsets needed to succeed. Be sure to visit our website at www.lawyerstellall.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, lean in, tune in, and let's take a deep dive.
Hello, everybody. It's Chris Mullins with LawyersTellAll.com and IntakeAcademy.com here with a wonderful interview with attorney Hillary Johns, and I'm going to let Hillary introduce herself.
Oh, thank you, Chris. It's nice to see you. And
Absolutely.
I am a civil trial lawyer, and I am based in Beverly Hills, but we also have offices in the Bay Area and New York City. And we are going into Montana next year, which I'm very excited about. And we practice civil and transactional matters in the areas of employment law, defamation in media, intellectual property, and business law. And on occasion, I will do a high-profile divorce, but that was more for my firm.
There you go. All right. Well, let's start with employment law. Tell me about that with regards to your firm, what's happening, what are some things that we need to be careful of?
Well, employment law is a really fast-growing area, and I think, frankly, it's long overdue. I think that if you look back even 100 years ago or 150 years ago, the working conditions for workers and employers and how things were done were so haphazard that we've come a long way. We've made a lot of progress. I think it can be very intimidating to employers. We do a lot of employer defense. We do some plaintiffs' work. We don't choose sides, but as a whole, we're a defense firm. A lot of employers, I think, in the day-to-day get so busy with running their businesses that they don't know if they're in compliance or not. They don't even know what they need to do. And we provide a lot of advice in that area. I think some people who are filing claims have legitimate claims. I'm not going to try to take anything away from them. But again, I just got off the phone before we started with this with one of our clients who was sued a bit ago, and the plaintiff's attorney said, well, just put a claim in your insurance and we'll take whatever insurance pays. So it can be a little scary for an employer running a business. You put your heart and soul into it. You're putting all this time into it and money, and it's your livelihood, and sometimes it's your life. And you get sued, and it can be taken away or it's diminished because of a suit that may or may not have merit. I'm seeing a lot of issues with wage and hour compliance. People making sure that they're getting paid for overtime, they're getting paid for breaks, that they are being supervised correctly. And I'm also seeing a lot of hostile work environment and sexual harassment. And sexual harassment has been around forever. But what I am seeing is a lot of hostile work environment claims and use of the media to do that, or other environments where people don't think the rules really apply to them. They're like, oh, well, it doesn't apply in this industry. I've had clients come to me and who work across several industries, so I'm not going to specify one, who say, oh, well, everybody does that here. That's just the way we do things here. No, it's not. The law is universal, applies to everyone. And I think a lot of it is people don't know. It's a lack of education in this area or a lack of instruction. But what I am seeing is employers are being left, I often get calls when employers are left wide open. I got a call from a client the other day who was frantic because they didn't have anybody in HR for a while. And so they were just doing things ad hoc as they did, which a lot of businesses do. I'm not knocking it. I mean, particularly if you have a small business or small to medium-sized business where it just grows and you're like, I don't know, it sort of took off and we went, and they forget to do these things. You can save yourself a lot of time hassle and money by having spending the extra time up front and having some procedures in place, like a sexual harassment prevention policy, a remote working policy, absenteeism. California in particular during the pandemic has been hit hard. I know that they just changed law, for example, limiting the number of days off for sick pay and things like that, the employees can take, because when they were working remotely, for example, they had that, you can take paid time off if you test positive for COVID, or if you're showing symptoms, as well as going to get tested, as well as going to the doctor. Some employees were abusing it. You do have these people who think, oh, great, I'm only going to have to work a couple of days, a couple hours a week, and a couple hours a day, or something like that, and get paid full time. So employers, one, they can't afford it. I mean, most employers cannot afford to have employees there off work. They can't. It's not because they're mean. It's not because they're trying to punish people. Sometimes it is, and then that's a different matter. But you're really seeing a lot of this where this working remotely, they're talking about labor shortages, but then they're laying people off. So you have this mix of difficulty recruiting people. I have seen a trend, and this is for employers, where some of the staffing agencies I've talked to as clients and otherwise have said they've never seen it this bad, where because of the pandemic, if you have a desk job, for example, and you have children or something like that, or other responsibilities, and it's a legitimate concern.
It is.
When the pandemic hit, everybody was, of course, working remotely except our Bay Area office for a bit. And then, everybody in our LA office wants to work remotely. They don't want to trek over to Beverly Hills. It's driving, it's parking. If they can stay at home, and to me, as long as they're productive, the things we have to do, depositions, trials, usually the judge wants you there, although we are doing those remotely. But a lot of law can be done remotely, and the employees like it because, hey, I don't have to commute. I can get up. I'm not having to put a suit on. That's nice. And if they're responsible, that works out great. But you do have these ones where it's never seen it this bad. People don't show up to work. There's some people, I think, and it's not someone who would work here, but there are some people who, if you don't sit on them, they're not going to do their work. And then what happens there? It doesn't get done, or the employer has to call another employee. And so the employee is sitting there going, why am I the only one doing work? And things like that. So it's unfortunately created a subset of issues that the state is still grappling to address. But a lot of these are, when the pandemic hit a couple of years ago, I remember it was about coming up in 2.5 years ago, when all those laws started changing. There were emergency orders in place. There were, people could work from home. People couldn't go out. And no one knew what it was. It was very, very scary for everyone. There were so many laws. I literally have to say, this is the law today. Governor Newsom could sign something. They could change the law tomorrow. And I still have to say, what's the law today may not be the law tomorrow, because particularly like in California, it happens in New York too. It moves a little slower. The laws change very fast, and it depends on the need. And because we are in such an unprecedented situation right now, where we've got the monkeypox, San Francisco is in a state of emergency. The whole state is. New York City is. These areas where you have very concentrated groups of people, and if people don't know how to address this yet. Is there a vaccine? Is it going to work? How does, you have to react fast. And I like to think that each state is doing the best they can do, given what they're dealing with, and so many people. But employers and employees are in a tough situation. Employees may not know their rights, may want to keep their jobs. I had a conversation over the 4th of July weekend with some friends. Some were lawyers, some were business owners, about people in hostile work environments or situations like that who go along with something or don't object or complain, not because they think it's okay, because whatever's going on, whether it's sexual assault, sexual harassment, verbal abuse, bullying, things like that, but which is common, or just snide comments or favoritism, things like that, not because they think it's okay. They need a job. They don't want to get fired. They don't want to get blackballed. They don't want to get badmouthed. Maybe they have kids at home. They have a mortgage. They have maybe they have student loans, other financial responsibilities. Maybe they're concerned about how this will look. So there are a lot of other factors that go into it. And I think employers and employees on both sides don't know what their rights are. And the state of California, to its credit, and the state of New York both do a very good job of having resources available online. Like sexual harassment prevention training, you can do that online through the state of California. They will allow you to do that, and it's free. It's so you're not having to pay for the video every time. You're not having to hire someone like me to come in and tell you, teach you. But it's a long list of things to do. And, if you're a small business in particular, or even a medium-sized business, that's a lot to ask. It's a lot of money to have someone there to manage it. We do employment law here. That's what we do. We work with production companies, private companies, investment companies. We tell them, this is what you need to do to be in compliance. This is what you need to do to keep track of it. Hey, there's a new law change. Do you want us to notify you? When is this due? How are you keeping track of it? Are you doing your calendar? And if there's an issue, and several of our clients, I may not hear from them for a couple of years, and they'll say, hey, Hillary, this came up, we need to talk. Can we do a call? And that's why we're here, because a lot can be done before suit gets filed, because litigation not only hurts the person people are getting sued, it can often hurt the person who's suing may have legitimate claims here. And if you can prevent this before it gets out of hand, it's a big deal, and your business can continue. And it's, I can say as a trial lawyer, trials can become very consuming, or a particular case can become very consuming. And it's easy for me to give advice, or you and I to give advice, but it's their life. And I always say, like, look, I'm giving you advice as a lawyer. It's not my life. This is going to affect you a lot more than it's going to affect me.
How do you, so a couple things, when people are working at home, and let's just say it's because of COVID, can the employer, can the law firm that they're working for, can they require that it's time for you to come back?
They can require you and say your job requires you to work in the office unless there's a disability issue. And it depends on the state and, the current state of things. It depends if there's a medical or other reason. For example, a person is highly susceptible, they have COVID, they have some. So the law does stay under the ADA that if you have to provide a reasonable accommodation. So if a person asks to remain working at home, you usually have to let them. But again, if their job is, for example, a receptionist, and they're supposed to be the person who's at the front, hi, how are you doing? Thank you. Please have a seat. Would you like some coffee? You can't really do that from a computer screen, can you? And I was presenting an MCLE last month or a month or so ago to NYCLA, New York County Lawyers Association. I was telling a story about in California, a judge had tested positive for COVID. So he had his robe, but he was okay. I mean, he's tested positive, but he wasn't showing severe symptoms, but he was positive. Had his little suit on, his robe on, and he had the background. He was working from home. In New York, they won't currently allow you to do that, but they're like, that's a good idea. So things like that, you can require, some jobs require you to be there. You're waiting tables. You're operating a forklift. Things like that. But it depends, part of it depends on the reason, and it can be, there's additionally how many people are there, assembly lines. But remote work, people have asked me that a lot. I really, unless there's a supervision problem or it's, sometimes we have like sort of a blended working situation. Say, why don't you come in a couple days a week or something like that? Because as long as they're getting more their work done, you're going to see a lot more of this. There's also a trend towards a lot of employees do not want to come back in the office. I've been working remotely for years. I don't, for myself personally, Chris, I don't think I could go into, and I like my office. We have a nice view. It looks great. The other one's got trees around it. The other one's near Union Square. I like my offices. I really do like them. I don't think I could come in every day and sit behind my desk all day. All day, every day. I think I would have real difficulty for myself, and I don't think I would be as productive. When I started working remotely, I really found that for myself, I was more productive because I wasn't worried about, I've got to pick up my dry cleaning. Oh God, I got to, do I have to cook it? I could put it on the stove and then come back here and get something done. How are my pets? Is there a list of things I need to do? And I think in a traditional law firm environment, that is not very doable, but I also understand Particularly in bigger firms, you're going to see a lot of that. But I found that most employers are very flexible from what I'm hearing about saying, yeah, you can come in a couple days a week and then you can come in there. So that I think I'm seeing those kind of
Yeah.
options and saying it's if someone's refusing to do it for no legitimate reason, say, look, the job requires this. What I'm also seeing is I have seen some instances, Chris, where people are having difficulty adjusting to remote work.
Mhm.
They like the collegial environment. They want to go over and they all want to sit together and they all want to do that and have lunch and they all want to hang out, which is fine, but maybe everybody else doesn't want to do that. You have to think of each individual and as a group. And, some people have other responsibilities. I can tell you right now, my staff is great. And I'm not just saying that. They really
Mhm.
are doing an amazing job. Half my staff would not be working at my firm if they had to come to the office because of the commute time, to one of
Mhm.
them. I have one he's just a super paralegal. And I know he's like, I know he got hired during the pandemic. He's like, after the pandemic, and I'm going to have to, I don't know if I can do that commute over to Beverly Hills. I'm like, you can work from,
Yeah.
and I think people appreciate the flexibility. What
Mhm.
I am seeing for certain things is I think the traditional way of thinking does not work anymore.
Mhm.
I know some people are like, if they work for big corporations, to go to a doctor's appointment, they have to take a day off. If they want to go see the dentist,
Mhm.
they have very, and again, in a small to medium sized business, you have the luxury of saying, yeah, I don't care if you need to go to the vet to do that. If you want to go out to
Yeah.
lunch with a friend. Um, One of our colleagues adopted a puppy and
Mhm.
his partner went over to pick the puppy up. I'm like, do you want to go? And he's like, yeah, I want to go. And he said, go, go. It's a big day for you. Go get the puppy. And he
Mhm.
did. And he sent me a photo and the dog was like on his shoulder and
Yeah.
everything.
I mean, I think all of that is great, but at the end of the day, I think it has to do with the particular. So, I mean, we're talking about law firms, but we'll just say business, the particular business of a particular firm, their leadership style, because what I see is, I mean, I remember back in the day when people used to get dressed up to go to work and, that whole thing. And now with Zoom, I mean, you see people with their pets and you see people with their big blankets and they're all, I mean, it doesn't seem very, it just, I
It's a
think it's a
law
little,
firm.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
law firm, but even besides that, I think it's lend itself to, not as professional. And then when that starts to happen, it starts to trickle into all types of performance. You
I
know,
agree.
if you're
Yeah.
relaxed here, you're going to be relaxed here and here and here when we're talking
Right.
about monitoring calls and handling intake and
Right.
how can, so
Yeah.
that's what I see.
No, I agree. And I remember when the pandemic first hit, they had an article in the New York Times and several about some of the appalling ways people were showing up to court. We had some guy, he was on camera like this and he didn't really, you're always on camera. I guess he didn't turn his camera off. So he was sitting there and he was in the Bay or somewhere in the Bay Area. He was an overweight guy and he had his shirt off and he was eating chicken like this.
No way.
Yes. And I wasn't there. My partner told me, and everybody was just, and then he got up and he walked off and so we got to see his big gut, and they walked off and they
Yeah, I
got his
mean,
on it. It's like, or not wearing pants. I mean, come on, I mean, get
yeah,
dressed. I mean, a judge put it well. He said, if you show up to court in a t-shirt or whatever you're wearing, I probably won't sanction you, but it tells me you don't care about your case very much.
right. And it's the same thing with your job. And I feel like the leaders at the firm don't know what they are allowed to say to hold their team accountable because of everything that you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that is what I guess it should be that is the problem why the law changed in California. It's a big problem, a big, big problem in the state. You have people not showing up for work.
Yeah.
I had a client who someone they hired just didn't show up and they go, what do I do? I don't know what to do because
Yeah.
what if something's wrong? They didn't hear from me. They didn't know if they'd fallen ill. They'd had an
Right.
accident. They
Yeah.
didn't know if they'd been killed. Turns out he's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like,
Yeah.
you need to tell them politely, one, if you don't show, one, have an absentee policy, it's a job abandonment policy. If you don't show up for a week, we're assuming you resign, you're done, and you're not eligible for unemployment. You
Yeah.
can do that legally. So because I've heard it on both posts. They go, yeah, people just don't show up for interviews. They don't call, and again, I can tell you here, they're not going to work here. I'm very lax about that. I'm not on others. And so they are expected to perform. But again, we have about 20 people here. And so it's easier to manage than 50 or 60 or
Yeah.
100.
Mhm.
And again, there's work to be done. If I'm in trial, staff knows full well, or partners in trial, I don't, or anybody else, they're in meetings or they're on a site. They're working at the computer, they're trying to fix something. They don't have time to look up and go, oh, hey, such and such, we're not, I think, part of it's a character issue.
Mhm.
And part of it, that's what we do, is have a list, because we get a lot of calls about that, Chris. We really do. And it's, these people are just not showing up. But that's unacceptable and unprofessional. You're expected to do a good job. If you want to do bare minimum mediocre work, that's not someone who's going to be doing that. And I think there's a certain sect of people in society, if they're not in a traditional office like what we've talked about, and they don't have someone sitting on them, they won't do anything. It's like little kids in junior high or high school. Some of them will do your homework without having to tell them. Other ones will do their homework. You have to sit on them. You have to push them. You have to say, look, you're going to get an F in this class. And it's and I think that is part of it's a character, but it is a huge problem on both coasts.
Yeah, I think that the leaders, they have to have structure for their team, no matter where they are.
Yeah.
The leaders, I don't think that they should be afraid of having structure and telling their team what they need them to do. And if they already know how to behave as leaders in the bricks and mortar part of the business, then I would think that they would know how to behave if they have some people working virtually.
Yeah.
But what are the warning signs? Because I think people would be interested in that. Like, what are the warning signs that you got a problem here?
I would say some of the warning signs are lack of productivity, attitudes. Sometimes you'll see they're scowling or they're rolling their eyes. For example, a lot of our staff, we do, like, for example, at our firm, we do staff meetings at least once a week. Everybody's on Zoom. We have staff luncheons at least once a month, where we don't talk about work, but people are seeing each other, so they can, aren't just a person on the phone. Lack of productivity, any kind of disrespectful behavior towards staff.
Yeah.
Things like that. If you're seeing staff or clients, that's the, and you have to those are something you need to put the clamps on right away.
Right away.
Because it will lead to a hostile work environment claim.
Yeah, and that's where the training and the teaching comes in, because the managers, the leaders, senior level, they would rather, from what I see, put their head in the sand and look the other way, because to avoid the confrontation, and it's more uncomfortable. They haven't learned how to do that.
No, I agree. And, I think that part of that is fear-based, Chris, because there's been so much change. And I don't think it's okay. I get calls oftentimes, men and women, saying, with the Me Too movement, Hillary, I don't know what to say. And I'm one of their gender equity network attorneys for workplace harassment, not on, reproductive rights, because that's not my area. But, we get, they don't know what they can and can't say. There were rules before which were pretty much, and I'm going to just go out on a limb here, very misogynistic. And if you weren't a WASP, essentially, with a lot of money, you pretty much, were being held hostage by these rules that only apply to certain few. Now there are different rights now, which there should be. I'm not saying there shouldn't be by any sense of the imagination, but I think a lot of people are like, I don't know what I can and can't say. And, some people think common decency should tell you. I mean, for example, we teach very specific examples. It's hey, you look nice today, as opposed to how you're saying it, as opposed to making a comment about a body part, And there are also things, but you cannot put up with people doing that, because it creates a toxic culture. And what I usually do is I usually push the hot button and say, look, if you don't do something, you're either going to get sued for non-performance, you're going to lose clients, you're going to have a bad reputation, or you're going to have a hostile work environment, because what will happen is there's going to be a real difference. You're going to have these top performers, people who are good people who do good work and are trying really hard and really applying themselves, and they're here every day and they're on time. They've got good attitudes. It's going to rub off on the rest of them, and it creates a morale problem. And you've got these people with bad attitudes, and it's just like anything else, and it's not really fair to allow people to do that. What I've also noticed is with the remote working is it's very easy to look like you're doing a lot of work when you really aren't.
I know.
It's very easy to do, but you have to be very direct. And, what you're describing, Chris, is a very common problem. You look so much like a colleague of mine. You are like almost her spitting image. You could be her sister. I'm looking at you. I almost wanted to call you Lana, even though I know you're not.
Okay, well, if you do, we know why.
But it's a very common problem. And they go, look, I don't want to be accused of bullying. I don't want to be, some people just don't want to be the bad guy. Or it's not a problem that the company, just leave it, they should deal with it. And again, a lot of people just don't like to get involved. They really, really don't.
Yeah, they like to look the other way, and that's not okay. I guess I probably believe for the most part, if you're running your law firm the right way and you're paying attention to all these rules and best practices, you probably won't have a problem with virtual because you're already doing it. And you understand it, and you understand the different things that you need to do homework on because you're already practicing. Your mind is already in that direction. But let me just ask you one last question is, what are the sexual harassment warning signs?
A few warning signs may be, they may be mental health problems like depression. A person who was once, people being fearful, people who were once outgoing are now withdrawn. You could see a drop in productivity. You could see a person who is looking deferential or things like that. Or you could be, you just sort of a feeling you get tension. I mean, there's the obvious ones where you're seeing posts, you're seeing texts, materials, jokes, comments like inside joke or any kind of jokes like that. You need to investigate. That is the law. You also have to look at, has there been a change in any kind of dynamic in a relationship? Because sometimes it will happen very abruptly. Like people are working together fine, and then the group goes out for a drink after work, or they go out for lunch, or they go to meet everybody, and something happens after hours, which, by the way, will lead to a hostile work environment complaint. It does not end when you punch the clock and leave. And someone hits on another person, or gets drunk and becomes very sexually aggressive, or God forbid assault someone. The person may not report it. They may come in. You may see a very distinct change in behavior either from that person and the other one. You also may see very aggressive behavior. Sometimes a perpetrator will try to get their story out first. We see that often in cases of harassment and sexual assault. That's the classic one. You sort of you trash the person who's been victimized. So, but I think any kind of changes in behavior, tension, lack of productivity, people who are chatting, and then you notice it's very quiet. Yes, okay, bye. People wanting to end calls. But it also signs of mental health issues. It doesn't mean they're crazy. It just means, it would be very common for a person who is getting harassed at work or bullied to become withdrawn, maybe become a little sad, look like, I don't mean like crying uncontrollably and can't, but those are very common reactions. And what I always tell clients is it's very similar to domestic violence. These people are having a reaction like a normal, healthy reaction to something that has happened to them that is wrong, that is really violating their space. I would also, I think, just observe. Sometimes you can see things like looks or, this kind of glaring or, you don't do this or, you can sort of tell if there's a different mood. And if you're seeing something, hey, I'm noticing this in the office, what's going on? And you can also interview each one privately. And you can also say, look, if you need to talk to someone, but as an employer, you can make sure you make those resources available. Like California and New York both have a list of resources that you can lead to, because, and then you have to look at also substance abuse and mental health issues. And that's usually when I would really recommend it may be time to have a staff meeting where you talk about sexual harassment, reporting, mental health,
Yeah.
substance abuse. It doesn't have to be about that incident. And that's usually
No, but I think it would be a good idea for firms to just do it on a regular basis as part of their training curriculum. That way it doesn't come out as, oh, something must be going on specifically right now.
right,
You know,
right,
so
right.
it's more like this is just something that we're all trying to be responsible for and educate everybody on.
Yeah.
And I think mental health is a tricky one because one of the things I talk about a lot with my clients is mental health because, it used to be the dental business that had serious mental health issues and suicide amongst doctors, and now it's law firms. And so you have to also be careful with team members that are exposed to the trauma that's going on with a client or a prospective client.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're just absorbing that and they're taking it on. So, and then there's that fine line. Is it because of that or is it because of something else?
Right. No, and again, that's very true, Chris. And they've also had some, particularly like with family law clients and things like that. Just particularly with those where it's very contentious fighting, and that lawyers can actually wind up with PTSD or just
Absolutely,
from dealing with that, because you're sitting there and you can't really put a stop to it because you can't interfere.
Right.
And you're having to do that. As an example, we deal with some very hot button type, very sensitive matters, and we always, first thing that, if you're not comfortable with this, you don't have to work on it. It's okay. You just won't be involved in it. It's all right. I have seen during the pandemic, though, I do think some people consider working from home. I consider it a luxury, but I think a lot of people consider it isolating. And I think a lot of people may have had, for example, substance abuse problems. Maybe they weren't alcoholics, but maybe they were prone to drinking a little more than they should. Maybe it's a bit of a problem, but it's not out, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Or they don't like being alone or sitting there all day. People are prone to depression, other issues. I have seen that during the pandemic too. And you do with clients, particularly as lawyers, you have to be very careful. I mean, our rule here is that if we have a client who's that bad, they're not going to be our client.
Yeah.
Because it causes stress for the staff. We're in a fortunate position where we're not dependent on one particular client. So if we lost a big client, okay, we'd have others. And it's, but again, I understand, and it's this is my co-counsel trigger. I understand it is very stressful, particularly if you're dealing with workplace violence. Family law is another big one.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have a client who's just out of control. I mean, sometimes you have this client
who
are very, well, for lack of a better word, flamboyant or brassy.
Yeah.
And they don't understand. They're demanding, they're pushy,
and they're abusive. They're abusive.
They are. And abusive clients, this is one thing that I teach, and I'm sure you've seen these. If you have an abusive client, it doesn't matter how much money, it's a tough call, because what if they're half your business, and they're abusive, and but you're going to get claims from all these people here. You're not going to get good work. You're not going to get good work for them. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have at a minimum, a lot of turnover, or you're going to get sued.
Yep.
And the law is very clear. If you have a client or a vendor, like, the UPS, say the UPS guy comes in every day and starts hitting on the receptionist, man or woman, whichever. Mm-hmm. And, that's a hostile work environment claim. You're responsible for that. Yeah. So, it's a tough call, but sometimes you have to cut a client off, or it's going to be very limited. I mean, we've had a few clients who I wouldn't say were abusive, but they're out of hand. And so it's just like, all right, fine, I will deal with them, or my partner deals with them. The rest of the staff does not have to have contact with them except for assignments. Mm-hmm. And so they don't even see the client. But usually then you're going to show the client the door. It is not worth getting it, because these lawsuits, if you know what's going on and you allow it to continue, a defense is not going to be, hey, you don't understand. I need this money and I need this client, and it's a big client. The court is not going to care. Mm-hmm. All people have been in a situation, either in school or at work, where they have had to put up with someone who's bad for morale, or bullying everybody and abusing, or is the boss's kid or is a friend, whatever it is. That is not fair to anybody. That will get you sued.
Yeah. So choose your staff. Yeah. Choose your staff, because if you don't choose your staff to take care of them, you want to keep the client instead, and you think they can handle it or whatever. Without your staff, you don't have a firm. So
No, and
choose your staff first.
it's not, no one does it alone. It's not just about the lawyer, as much as someone may like to think that, you're only as good as your staff. If you don't have a good staff, you're going to really be limiting yourself. And it's the right thing to do. It's the
That's
decent
exactly,
thing.
yeah.
It's the decent thing to do. And maybe it doesn't stop this client from doing it. Maybe they go on and do it to someone else. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe they'll think twice about it. But you know what? It sends a very clear message to, we're not going to put up with it.
Yeah.
You're never hurting. It's one thing to have ridiculously high standards, but it is never a bad thing to have keep your standards high and say, we don't do anything here. Why don't you go find another attorney? And, they all say, I've had to do that. I mean, in this past year, I've had to part ways with people on today. Why don't you just find another attorney? If that's your attitude, then why don't you do that?
Yeah.
And you got to stick to your guns. You can't back away from once you do that. It's not, I'll change. It's the right thing to do. I think it makes the workplace safe. It is not a good feeling to come into work going, oh my God, is this person going to go off on me? And I've heard some really horrific stories about workplace violence and yelling and screaming. And then you get this, oh, well, I was just stressed out, or whether it's the employer or someone, the staff or a client, throwing things,
Oh, yeah.
And it's, no, I mean, why would you ever think that's okay?
Yeah.
You had a bad day, so what? Go talk to your therapist.
That's
Go work
right.
out.
That's right.
This is not something you need to bring here. And that's scary.
It is scary.
What if you were you were a secretary or an assistant out in the hallway and you see someone throw a chair across the room? What are you supposed to think? This Jerry Springer? This is a law firm. If you don't have enough pride in your work and your firm to know that that is not okay, get out. And, you have to.
Yeah. I think maybe the thought to leave everybody with is education, just ongoing education and information. Don't wait for something to be wrong to go ahead and just do it now. And if you're a small firm, do it on a small scale, but do it.
And they have a lot of resources that don't cost anything. Like and one way to do it is there's videos. You just say, look, I'm paying the staff for the time. And once in a while I get, well, Hillary, you're paying the staff for time. I want you to see these. I want you to, like the Beverly Hills Bar Association has MCLEs and the YouTube channel. A lot of them others do. They're free to view. They do great sections on ethics. This is why we do this way. This is how we deal with the media. These are your rights here. If you'd like to watch other ones, if you'd like to go to these. So it's sort of a continual education thing where they learn it, sort of intermittently. So they're going, okay, that's why we do this. But they should feel good. People should feel good about where they work. I mean, it's work. I mean, I'm sure that everyone in my office and most firms will say there's much other things I'd rather be doing than working. But you want to feel good when you go to work, and you don't have to be best friends, but you have to be civil and treat people with respect.
Yeah.
If you do that, and again, you have to remember, just because I think it's funny or this, that might be offensive or make someone uncomfortable.
Exactly. At the end of the day, just be kind.
I don't understand.
Be kind and get education.
Exactly. And there are resources available too. Even the state's DIR, Department of Industrial Relations in California, the New York's, they have resources there you can read about what this is. Because some people don't know what domestic violence is. Some people don't know what workplace violence. They know they've seen it. But they don't know. And there's no reason they should. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. You've been doing what you do for a long time.
Yeah.
They don't know that. So they're seeing it. They know they don't like it. They know it's scaring them. So they're dealing with that for the first time. And, but I think it is an employer's job to protect their employees, hands down.
Yeah. And again, at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. And Hillary, I really appreciate your time today, everybody. Hillary Johns. And what's a good contact information in case folks want to get in touch with you?
You're welcome just to email me, Hillary, 2 L's at hillarytriallawyer.com. It's easy to remember. So, and I had such a nice time today, Chris.
Oh, that's good.
I so appreciate you inviting me, and I hope that I was helpful. I did want to make one other comment real quick. Defamation, guys. Be careful what you say in the workplace. We've got a matter right now where employers getting sued because someone thought that they knew more than everybody else, and the supervisor started making nasty comments about an employee who was terminated. Don't do it. Sometimes you just got to know when to shut up. If you're thinking about saying things that are nasty, they may be true and warranted and well-deserved. Sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. You don't, and again, you have someone who can't afford it is getting dragged into a lawsuit.
Yeah. That's a good last point to end on. I appreciate that. All right, everyone. LawyersTellAll.com and TakeAcademy.com. We'll see you again real soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to Lawyers Tell All, where Chris Mullins takes you on a journey with lawyers in the trenches who show you the realities of what it takes to succeed in this chaotic, crowded, ever-changing profession. Remember to visit our website at www.lawyerstellall.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on Lawyers Tell All.